Most of you all got this one 97%. I was really happy about that because it's very important. Where is most of the Earth's fresh water found? The answer is in glaciers. Good job on that. Please remember that because with climate change, uh, we are seeing so many glaciers melt. Well, what's going to happen when we no longer have that source of fresh water there? And it's not, and once it's gone, we're going to have some trouble. All right. When carbon dioxide dissolves in water, the water becomes, the answer is acidic. Remember, we did that test. It looks like 97% of you got this one correct too. So good job on that one. This is something that we have to remember also with climate change. When there's a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, that carbon dioxide is going to absorb into the water of the ocean, and the ocean is going to become more acidic. That causes problems with like the coral reef bleaching and so on. Okay, characteristics of viruses and organisms. From the very beginning, we started talking about what do viruses look like? Are they considered alive? What is the meaning of life? And so on and so forth. So I can, you can imagine that like I wanted to fall down and scream when only 41% of you got this correct. You should have pictures of this, um, different examples of this in your notebook because we've talked about it over and over. So remember, we have a couple of different things in our notebooks about the characteristics of life. And one of the characteristics of life is that they can metabolize. Okay, they have all of this energy in their system, and they can do metabolism. All right, viruses, they cannot do metabolism. They cannot reproduce without a host. There's all these things that viruses cannot do on their own, so they're not considered living. But remember, viruses do have DNA. They might have RNA, and they are surrounded by that protein capsid. All right, but they do not have mitochondria. Mitochondria are responsible for energy production, and the viruses, they they don't do metabolism. They don't have the mitochondria in there. They don't have those membrane-bound organelles to do specific things. All right, so the answer is C. You don't find the mitochondria in viruses. When scientists classify living things, they do not include viruses. This is because they're not made of one or more cells. Remember, they do not, one of the characteristics of living things is that they are made of cells. Viruses are not made of cells. Recall the three tenets of the cell theory. Which of these statements can be used to determine that viruses are non-living? All right. This is all, if you look back at the cell theory, not all cells contain a nucleus. Okay, so A does not make sense because prokaryotic cells, they fit the cell theory, they're considered living, but they don't have a nucleus. It's not one, they don't have membrane-bound organelles. So A cannot be the correct answer. B are not composed of cells. Well, that can't be the correct answer because the cell theory says that everything is composed of cells. All right. This is the correct answer, C. They're not able to reproduce. Again, over and over and over, we say that viruses are not considered living because they can't reproduce, they can't do metabolism, and we have that little cutout in the notebook that talks about all the things that cells do. The cell theory: they metabolize, they reproduce, they respond to stimuli, they contain genetic material. So that's where you should have been able to find that one, number 19. Now, this, man, I don't know what else to do here. We have been going over this since the beginning of class. We've written a claim evidence reasoning on it. We keep going back to this over and over and over again. 22% of y'all got this one correct. That means that 78% of y'all are getting this wrong. So I'm just at a loss of how to help you with this one. But remember, go back to the hand in your notebook. You have that little thing glued there in there at the very beginning, and it talks about all the things, the characteristics of life. And we also have claim evidence reasoning, and we in your notes should have, we've talked about the things that viruses can't do. Okay, they're not able to reproduce. A model of a bacteriophage is shown in the image here. When comparing the virus bacteriophage to the host cell that it infects, which statements are accurate? Selects all that apply. So here we're just saying in simple words what is true about a virus. Okay? So statement A, viruses and bacterial cells have DNA and RNA. Do viruses and bacterial cells have DNA and RNA? They do. Okay. Um, so that one would get a check. That is a true statement. Remember, when you have select all that apply, you go through each one and you say, is this a true statement or a false statement? Okay, viruses and bacterial cells undergo cell division. Okay, this is not an accurate statement. Viruses do not reproduce, they do not go through cell division. So that is not an accurate statement, meaning you would check that. Viruses and bacterial cells are approximately the same size. Viruses are much smaller than bacterial cells. Um, we have seen some pictures of this. It looks like it lands on top of a cell, and it's like this little spaceship landing on the earth or something like that. So the viral cells are much, much smaller. So this is not an accurate statement. D, viruses and bacterial cells contain structures made from proteins. Now that's accurate. Remember, we talk about, proteins are the structural components of whatever. And so they do contain proteins because, that structure, that capsid that is on the outside of a virus has to contain, some proteins to form the structure of it. So we would check D. Viruses and bacterial cells contain mitochondria for energy production. No, discussed that a couple of slides back. Viruses do not have membrane-bound organelles, mitochondria. They do not metabolize or have energy processes. So what we would be selecting here is statement B and statement B and C. Let me make sure I said that right. Okay. B, viruses and bacterial cells. Let's see, when comparing which statements are accurate. Okay, so we're looking for accurate statements here. Viruses do contain DNA and RNA. So A is accurate. B is not accurate because viruses don't undergo cell division. C is not accurate. They're not the same size. Viruses are much smaller. And then D, viruses and bacteria contain structures made from proteins. That is accurate because both of them have proteins. E is not accurate. So the ones that you would check, let me restate this. The ones that you would check on here are going to be A, both of them have DNA and RNA, and D, they both contain structures made from proteins. All right, so make sure I think I said the wrong letters whenever I was going through it. Let me say it one more time. The correct answers here is going to be A is an accurate statement and D is an accurate statement.